All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're doing something I think we do best here. We're taking a microscope to a really tiny piece of source material, just one single sentence from a historical text. And we're going to see just how much insight we can pull from it. It's amazing, isn't it? How a few words can tell you so much about authority, compassion, and, well, power.
That is absolutely the mission today. We're zoning in on Mark chapter 1, verse 31. And the description is so simple. It's about Jesus healing Peter's mother-in-law. It just says, and he went to her, took her by the hand, and raised her up, and the fever left her instantly. So we're going to unpack that specific act, that simple touch, and see what it tells you about how extraordinary power can work in some very ordinary ways.
Okay, so let's set the scene because it's incredibly domestic. You have Peter's mother-in-law, and she's just lying in bed. The text makes it sound like she's completely confined, weak from a high fever. And what's interesting to me right away is that the sources don't say she asked for help. She don't call out or anything. It was others, I guess Peter, his family, who brought it to Jesus's attention. They just told him she was sick.
And that setup is so critical because it already creates this huge contrast with how we think about sickness today. I mean, just think about our modern process. When an illness really hits you hard, well, the whole process is complicated, and we expect it to be. You go in, the doctor starts the analysis, right? What are the symptoms? How long have this been going on?
Yeah.
Then you get the tests, blood work, maybe scans, prescriptions. And often it takes time, multiple visits. We basically see sickness as this stubborn enemy. It takes a long, drawn-out battle to resolve. We're just conditioned for that.
Right, we build our entire medical system around that drawn-out process. We're taught that anything serious is slow to fix. But what happens in Mark 1.31 is, oh, it's just so radical. It totally subverts that. The text is so clear. The fever left her instantly. There's no struggle, no argument, no waiting period for the medicine to kick in.
Exactly. And what's so fascinating here, and this is really our first big nugget, is this collision of the ordinary and the divine.
Yeah.
The setting is totally mundane. A private home, a sickbed, a quiet movement. It almost feels like something any of us would do for a loved one, helping them set up. But the result is completely miraculous. It is absolutely not natural.
Yeah, I mean, a high fever doesn't just vanish because someone helps you out of bed. Your body isn't instantly restored to full strength just from a touch. So the power of the scene is in that quiet contrast. Why do you think the author made such a point of saying instantly?
I think it's a deliberate shorthand. In a world that was used to long recoveries, instant establishes undeniable authority. It's communicating that this power isn't like medicinal, it's absolute. Sickness, which is usually so stubborn, just dissolves. The moment this authority shows up, it shows the divine can manifest completely in the quietest and most accessible places.
That's a great point. It's not the drama that proves the power. It's the immediate, complete result. So let's pivot a bit to the mechanics of it, the how. The text really focuses on his actions. First, he didn't hesitate. He didn't send someone else in or, shout a command from the doorway. It says he went to her. He actually entered her personal space, the sick room.
And that detail, went to her, I mean, for the original audience, that's loaded with significance. In first century Jewish society, a serious illness, especially a fever like this, it often carried ideas of ritual impurity. There were pretty strict rules about contact with the severely sick. People kept their distance to avoid becoming unclean themselves.
So by walking right up to her and then touching her, he isn't just dealing with the fever, he's also ignoring a really deep social rule.
Precisely. His authority isn't just over the illness, it's authority over the social and ritual barriers people put up. He just broke that rule of clinical distance. He took her by the hand and raised her up. It's so physical, so personal. It shows he has zero fear of contamination, but at the same time, it's an act of immense power. It's compassionate, but it was also pretty radical.
I think that's the key insight for us, that personal presence. It wasn't a booming command from afar. It was physical contact that showed care, while also, changing everything in an instant. It's why the scene feels so relatable, even with the supernatural outcome.
It connects the power directly to his personhood. He meets people right where they are, in their kitchens, their bedrooms, the unglamorous parts of life. The hand that took hers was both the hand of intimate compassion, lifting her gently, and the hand of divine authority, restoring her instantly. It suggests power and vulnerability can exist in the same quiet act.
It makes me think about when you're really sick and just someone holding your hand or helping you sit up feels like the biggest comfort in the world. He took that very human act of care and just elevated into divine restoration.
And don't forget the result. She was raised up. The verb that's used there, it often implies a full restoration to life. She
Yeah.
wasn't just a little better. She was so completely restored, she could immediately get up and serve them.
Okay, so if we look at this scene in the context of the whole chapter, Mark chapter 1, it really highlights what's missing here. And this brings us to our second big nugget. What's so striking in this moment is what Jesus does not do.
It really is. It's a study in quiet power, especially when you compare it to everything else going on in that chapter. I mean, we know from just a few verses earlier that he was more than capable of loud verbal confrontations.
Exactly. He publicly rebukes an unclean spirit with this clear authority, commanding demons to come out. It says the crowds were astonished. And later, he does the ultimate act of power by declaring sins forgiven, which only God can do. So, why here, in this private, intimate moment, is there just this total absence of performance? He says no recorded words. He doesn't issue a command to the fever. There's no visible act of power beyond just taking her hand and lifting her up.
That is an excellent question. And the answer, I think, is what elevates this story. I mean, is it possible he spoke and the author just left it out? Maybe. But the emphasis is entirely on the physical action. It suggests the author wants us to understand something fundamental about his power. His authority doesn't need to be validated by shouting or ceremony.
So if he doesn't speak, the power is just inherent in who he is, not in what he says.
Precisely. His power isn't diminished when he acts quietly. Whether he's commanding demons with a loud voice or healing a fever with a quiet touch, the outcome is identical. Creation responds, instantly and completely. The fever just. It recognized its master in that touch, and it was gone. It teaches us that authority isn't always about noise. The combination of authority and humility in that quiet touch is what makes it so powerful.
That's a huge takeaway, especially today in a world that constantly equates importance with being the loudest voice in the room. We're always looking for the big, spectacular sign, but maybe the most profound power is in a gentle act of care.
And I want to circle back to how this all started, because this is where the application really starts to take root for us. The healing began because others told Jesus about Peter's mother-in-law. They just brought her need to him. They entrusted her situation into his hands. They didn't propose a cure or demand a miracle. They just presented the problem.
And this is where it gets so relevant for us today, right? The source material is basically framing this as an invitation to us. We live in a time of just unprecedented fatigue, burnout culture, anxiety, this chronic despair. And this story suggests our part is actually very simple. Just let Jesus know who needs help. Bring the sick, the weary, the burdened.
And the freedom in that is that we don't need to know the how. We just present the need. We don't have to formulate our prayers like some complex medical prescription. We just have to trust that he knows what he's doing. And that's true whether the restoration is instant or if it's part of a quieter, more gradual process.
That trust is hard, though. We're so used to managing everything, to controlling the outcome. We often treat our own spiritual weakness like a physical illness. We try to fix it ourselves first. And only when we're totally exhausted do we let anyone else or, the divine step in.
Which brings us to our third nugget, the ongoing significance of that gentle touch. The source material is making the claim that the same hand that lifted Peter's mother-in-law still reaches out today, that he continues to lift us up from whatever binds us, whether it's despair or fatigue or spiritual weakness. These are the modern fevers that keep us in our metaphorical beds.
Yeah, when you think about those modern pressures, the weight of career expectations, the loneliness that can come from being so digitally connected, the idea of a purposeful, loving touch that just restores your ability to get up and function, that's profound. The text is clear on this. When Jesus raises us up, what binds us loses its grip. The fever, the fear, the doubt, it all lets go, sometimes instantly, sometimes over time.
And that full restoration to function where she immediately gets up and serves, that suggests a holistic healing.
Yeah.
It's not just that the illness is gone, it's that purpose and energy are back. It encourages us to focus on trusting the method, that purposeful touch, instead of demanding a loud miracle.
It makes you ask, are we so focused on seeing the fire and the thunder that we're missing the quiet restoration that's happening in our own lives? That subtle shift in perspective, that renewed energy to face another day. So we started this deep dive with just one short sentence, Mark 1.31, and we've uncovered a huge contrast. We, as learners, are so often expecting these extraordinary signs, these dramatic confrontations when we're looking for help. But this one historical snapshot reminds us that sometimes the greatest power works through quiet obedience, simple faith, and these really gentle acts of love.
And that leaves us with a final thought to mull over. The idea of trusting these ordinary miracles. The source material shows that the greatest authority isn't always in a dramatic public showdown. Often, it's in the simplest, gentlest, quietest acts of care. A touch, a presence, a lift. So the next time you feel bound by weariness or despair, maybe ask yourself this: how often am I overlooking a quiet, gentle act of restoration, an ordinary miracle in my own life, because I'm still waiting for the earth to shake and a loud breakthrough to announce itself?
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the profound power of the gentle touch. We'll see you next time.